Hello and welcome to this episode on spreadsheet training. This is the third episode in a series we're doing with Excel 2010 as our spreadsheet application of choice. We've got other videos that we've already done on Excel 2003 and Excel 2007. So this week we're going to look at inserting graphs and charts and the different sorts of things we can do with those. We're going to look at conditional formatting, and if we have time we're also going to look at the use of filters. But each of those topics are reasonably big ones in their own right. So let's dive in. So we're going to start off with looking at graphs or charts, as I think they're called in America. So here is a very basic spreadsheet with some fictitious car salespeople for 4 years. So you can see across the top there we've got the years 2008, 9, 10, 11, and then there are 3 teams, essentially we're pretending competing against each other, and then they've got their targets along the bottom. So first of all, the good news is with the later versions of Excel, creating graphs and charts is actually very, very easy. There used to be a chart wizard, and they've sort of merge that all into one operation, and for the most part it's actually much better. You get something straight away, as I'll now demonstrate, but then you have to go back in and edit it. There's no way to sort of do it all in one process. You'll see what I mean. So let's highlight and create a chart. So let's just make a chart of how well team A, B and C did across these 4 years. So one of the little secrets to making a chart is sometimes having your data laid out in a nice, easy manner so that you can select it. You can do more advanced selection techniques, which we'll look at, but sometimes, do you know what I mean? If it's the case of just moving a column around here and there, it might actually make more sense to do that, and you'll see what I mean as I'm progressing. So I'm just going to select here from A2 down to E5. Okay, so we've selected approximately about 20 cells there, and then I want to insert a chart, so that should tell you that we want to go to the insert ribbon, and basically you've got a whole bunch of predefined chart styles here. Some are better at conveying certain types of information. Generally, if you're dealing in percentages or things that total up to 100 or parts of a whole, then the pie chart is the way to go. Other than that, I think my personal favourite is generally a column chart or sometimes a line chart. A bar chart is a column chart just tilted, and the others are more specialist charts that we will look at if we have time. So let's go ahead and create a column chart. I'm sure you know that if you just press the button, it will do whatever it says on the button. Also, there's a little down arrow underneath the button where you get to choose different types of, and essentially they're all column charts, they've just got different effects. Each one, by hovering over it, will tell you a little bit about it, but let's just choose the very, very basic 2D one, and we'll look at some more fancy ones in a moment. And so there it is. We've got a chart that's been created. It's been created from not only the data that we've got, so the data by, I mean this section here, okay, that I'm highlighting now, but it's also used our row and column headers, team A, team B, team C, and the years, okay, and we can see team A, B and C has been, this is called the legend, this box on the right hand side. The legend is just a description of what different things mean. So here it's telling us what each coloured bar represents. Okay, now we do need some labels on this chart, which we'll come to in a minute, because you can't actually tell from glancing at it what is actually going on. We can see it's team A, team B and team C, and we can see that they've done certain numbers of certain things in different years, but we need some labels and some titles to really help the reader fully understand our chart. First thing I'd like to point out, again, with this new design, it's not really that new, the ribbon, anymore. It's been there since 2007. We are in 2013 at the time of recording this, so 6 years isn't that new. But It is context sensitive, and by that what I mean is at the moment, can you see that it says chart tools here, and we've got design, layout and format, and these, if I click away, if I click off the chart, that will disappear. Okay, and so this context sensitive menu or ribbon options only appear when you select the appropriate trigger for them. In this case, I'm selecting a chart. Now let's have a look at the first tab. So these are all three of these are all ways to edit and alter and add to and take away from the chart that we've actually inserted. One of the most fundamental switches and changes you can make in the chart is using this button here, this switch row and column. It's a very simple button, it does one thing, but it's very, very useful. What I've done here is I've selected, as you can see, you saw me select the data. Now when I was selecting it, I didn't tell it whether I wanted the graph or the chart to be based around the years, which it is showing us at the moment. You can see on the chart we've got 2008, 2009, 10, 11, and the teams are the sort of each represented by their own bar chart. Or maybe I wanted it the other way around. Maybe I wanted Team A, Team B and Team C and the different years represented by the colour, and that's exactly what this button does. It switches around, basically flips what the chart is or how the chart is conveying the information. Okay, so we're now plotting how Team A essentially have done over the 4 years, how Team B have done over the 4 years, how Team C have done over the 4 years. If we switch it round the other way, we're now comparing how A, B and C did in year 2008. The second one shows us how Team A compared to Team B compared to Team C. You can sort of compare them. Like I can see here that, and by hovering over any part of the chart, it will give you the exact values. If you know, this red one might be a little bit hard to read, so if I hover over it, I can see that the value is 110, and you might be able to guess that because the bottom line is 100 and the top line there is 120. But you know, if it was 111, you know, it's hard to spot. So if I want to compare Team A here, how it did in 2008 with how it did in 2009, I can, but it's not the easiest comparison for my eye, whereas I can switch things around and then I can much easier see how they've done in the different years. Okay, so that'll just be whatever information you're trying to present. Maybe even just have a flick every time you do it and see if you prefer the information, if it makes sense one way or the other. Okay, great. We've also got a bunch of chart styles here. These are nothing more than like icing on the cake. We can change how they look. Interestingly, the hovering function isn't working here. I'm actually going to have to click them. I actually think that's probably a bit harder to read. You know, these two shades of red here are very close to one another. So I don't think that's particularly good. And you can pick all these different colours, and indeed some have got styles on. So you know, this one's turned everything black, and it's done a little emboss to sort of make these look a little bit more three-dimensional. So there's all different types of charts and things. Let's go with this. Actually, do I like that one the best? That's what it's all about. It's about choosing them. There we go. I quite like that. That's sort of put a little bit of a shadow towards the bottom of each of the columns. So I quite like that. And that's all we really want from the design. The most functional and useful criteria by far on here is this switch row and column. Okay, so I highly recommend using that. Let's now go to the layout ribbon. Okay, and this is the one where we can add more information. So they told you this in school, and I'm going to tell it you again. Every chart needs a title. You will not pass the course if you create any charts that don't have titles on them, because you don't know what it is a chart. You know, you need to have a title. Okay, and on the key skills or functional skills quizzes, you know, it's something they're always asking and checking is about charts and titles of the charts. So let's add a title. So it's quite easy to do. Over here on the left hand side, I've got chart title. Again, I've got my little drop down box. Currently, none is selected. you can see the little orange box around with a little X on it. So that's saying do not display a chart title. We've got two options for having one. We can have one what's called overlaid, whereby it sort of sits inside the graph or chart. So let's just give, so what is this? This is yearly car sales. So yearly car sales. And once you've typed in your name of your chart, just click somewhere and that sort of cements it. I personally don't like this style too much. It's only a personal preference, but if these columns were taller, then it might possibly overwrite it. So I think above the chart looks a little bit better. Okay. Now we also need to add some titles to our axes. Okay, there are two axes on a two-dimensional chart such as this: the X and Y. The Y is the vertical one here, and the X is the horizontal one. I'm just doing those purely for demonstration purposes. A couple of ways of remembering which way is which. My personal favourite is that X is across, and being horizontal, it goes across. Okay, the Y is the vertical, and a capital Y has a vertical element to it. The little bar, the little sort of up and down part, you know what I mean. I can't describe it very well. But the little stem at the bottom of the Y is vertical, and there is no vertical part on an X. So you can always remember that the vertical one has a bit of has some vertical elements to its letter. I think I've made that a lot more complicated than it should be. But basically, you've got two axes, the X and Y axis. So the X axis in this case, Team A, Team B, Team C, I think it's quite self-explanatory. I don't think we really need any more. You know, we could possibly put a title saying divisions inside of our company or something like that, divisions inside of acme.com. But what we do definitely need is a title on the y-axis. Because what do these numbers represent? Are they pennies or are they millions of pounds? So unless you have some sort of title, you're not going to know. So let's go ahead and add one in. So because I clicked off the graph to add my X and Y, just purely for demonstration purposes, I now have to come back in. So I go to Layout, go to Axes, Titles, and I'm going to just label the vertical or the Y axis. I have a few choices at the moment. Obviously, we have no title displayed. We can have a rotated title or vertical title or horizontal title. So let's just have a quick look at what each of them look like. So here's my axis title. I'm going to say that these are pounds. So I'm going to put the pound sign in there. It's not allowing me to do the pound sign because I'm using a virtual machine. So let's imagine it's in dollars. And I'd say it was in thousands. Let's do that. And then I click away once I've typed it in. I accidentally clicked on the chart there. So dollars, thousands. So, you know, you can imagine that that's 20,000, 40,000. I think that's quite self-explanatory. Let's look at the different types of alignments and things we can have on the vertical axis. So this is rotated. This is written vertically. Not as nice, I don't think. And finally, we can also have it so it's horizontal. Takes up a bit too much space. So I think we actually we hit the first one correct the first time. Okay. And as far as this chart is concerned, I think we've actually now, that's fine. You know, we've got all the information. It's all now correctly labelled. This would now pass as a complete chart. I don't think, you know, you have to sometimes make the decisions as to whether to label both axes. You know, and sometimes that's quite self-explanatory. And even if we'd switch the date around to here, and we had the years across the bottom, I don't think there's any real need to say, you know, years. I think it's quite self-explanatory. So that's very useful. Let's look at the, so by the way, we can also add in we've got a whole bunch of different options here about whether we have the data table. So I'll just show you what that means. So if I click on show data table, we can actually, in the actual graph itself, have the data we're using. I'm not actually going to bother with that. We can pick the graph up and move it around, just as you can with any image. Okay, we can go to any corner and we can drag it to make the graph a lot bigger. And I think quite nice, large, vibrant graphs are probably a lot easier to read. I can only actually adjust it from the corners, okay, but I can change its shape. So I can make it very, I mean that's not going to be very useful at all, but I can make it very, very thin and wide, or I could go the opposite angle and I could make it very tall and thin. Probably a little bit more readable, in fact, that way. But we'll just go back to our nice standard layout here. Finally, going to look at the format options, and again, formatting, this is just to do with the sort of the different styles. So at the moment, as you can see, as I hover over these shape styles, all it's actually doing is changing the shape of the outside box. As I come in and use them, and basically I'm just hovering over these and I'm just seeing what effect these apply. So I don't think we really have to spend much time on this. Most of them, I think, look pretty hideous. So I probably wouldn't use any of those. Maybe if we actually change the background colour of the graph, which we can do, that might be quite useful. So let's just have a look at a couple of sort of more advanced features. I'm just showing you also, as well as having different styles, I can think of the word, different styles for the sort of square it sits in and the graphics. We've also got different styles over here for the text that's based around it. To be honest, it all looks pretty hideous. Let's go with that one for a second. So, you might like it if you're 12, but most of it doesn't look very nice. I haven't got a particularly good sense of design. I know what I like to see, but I'm not very good at actually creating it. So I'll just reset that back. Let me show you something that is good. We've got all these different types of bars going up here, and they're in these colours, and we saw before that from the design tab we can change what sort of colours they are, but we're sort of slightly limited. But if we come into this format tab, we can actually do a lot more. And the way this works is we specify which one we want to work on. So let's work on this blue one here at the moment, and this is really cool. So I can just change, I can pick any colour for any individual one, which is quite nice. Okay, so I really do like this. Okay, we can choose gradients, the style of gradient and how the drop shadow works. Okay, so again, I like that, that's really nice. Okay, that these ones already have some sort of gradient on them, as from when we originally did it. We can add some textures, sort of bubbles and fish and stone. These look less good, I'll be honest. Okay. But they're there in case you ever wanted. And what I would imagine that you would use these for is something contextually relevant to what you were doing. So if you were doing a graph about swimming pools, then maybe having these bubbles in might look in some way normal. If you were a seller of marble, then you could use the different marble textures to indicate different headstone sales or whatever. However, what I really do quite like is the fact that you can use pictures. Okay, so I've got this pile of dollar bills as we switched currencies. So I'm going to click on those and look at that. Look how wonderful that is. Well, no, hopefully you can tell I'm being sarcastic. It looks awful, but what you can see what it's actually done there is it's stretched the picture out to fill up the size of the chart. Okay, which is all right, but not really what I want to do. So there's one last thing I can do to make this look a lot better, and that's I can right click on the image and I can choose Format Data Series, And then from my fill menu, you can see here that by default it chooses this stretch, which we've already said is absolutely horrible. However, look at this. Underneath, I've got the ability to stack. And I think that actually looks quite cool. You can choose your own scale if you want to. I mean, that's a tiny scale. Let's see what it looks like at 10, perhaps. Maybe that's... Yeah, so that actually fits really nicely, having 10. Okay, and here you can change other things like transparency as well as the image. So I don't think you don't. So 100% transparent is obviously totally see-through. I don't actually think we would use that transparency. So let me just close. So let me just reiterate what that was again. That was a right-click on the actual column and choose Format Data Series, and then we go to the fill. So a couple of little hoops to jump through there, but I think you'll agree that I think that looks pretty cool, quite fun, especially if it's something. What you do here is then you use very pertinent images to whatever you're trying to reflect. So what I really should have done here, actually, instead of using car sales, is I could have got pictures of the different cars and have those stacking up on top of one another. In fact, let's just very quickly, let's just show the whole process. So here I googled for some money. Let me Google for a car. So let's imagine, and I think probably helps if they've got a white background. I won't really go into all of the... So I'm now going to right click and I'm going to save this image on my computer. Okay, I'm just going to save it onto the desktop. To do anything, you do have to get permission for certain images if you're going to be using them for certain, some may be subject to copyright, but I'm just going to put it on here for a second and then delete it. So let me just show you the process one more time. Let's do it for this red column. So I click on it, I go to fill and I choose picture. Okay, and then here's my car. It'll immediately stretch it. Now, for some reason, it didn't choose the whole series, it just chose the one. Let me just try one more time. There we go. Must have been just a technical glitch for a second. Obviously, they look horrible stretched, so we then go into Format Our Data, we choose Fill, and I'm going to stack it. And again, I think there's probably a few too many of them there, so let's use the same scale that we used last time, because I think that worked quite nicely, having 10 cars. And there we go. And now I can edit around the edge of them, make them stand out a little bit more. But I quite like the ability to do it. I wish I had more artistic talent to actually be able to choose relevant things, but I think that's quite fun and quite useful. So now let's have a look at something else, some conditional formatting. So here I have a chart. I'm sorry, I've got charts on the brain now. Here I just have some data, some information. It's a very basic spreadsheet. This line here, what I want it to be, I'm just going to delete that. And I'm going to put a little auto sum in there. That's great. Let me just do it one more time. Okay, so that's just totaling everything up. I'm just going to grab the bottom right hand corner, drag it across, and there we go. What I've got is I've got a whole bunch of what I've actually done is I've made random numbers here. Just as a little aside, very useful if you just, mainly for training purposes actually, but I'll just show it you. There's a function called rand_between, whereby you tell it let's say I want a random number between 15 and 20. I type in 15 here, I press a comma, I put 20 here, I close my brackets, and it'll give me a random number between 15 and 20. And you can actually see all the numbers on my screen changing as I add in other data, because they're just random. They're just randomly moving around. Because it doesn't really matter for the purpose of this. Okay, and so what I'd like to do is out of all of our totals here that we've got, I'm just playing with this as I talk, all of our totals, what I need to do is I need to be able to see which ones are above a certain figure. So let's say I need to be aware of anything that's higher than, say, £800. If we had an £800 debt in any 1 month for any one bill, that's a really bad one. So it'd be nice if I could have some sort of way of seeing anything that's above £800. So let's have a look. That's exactly what the sort of thing that conditional formatting does. So I'm going to select a bunch of cells here, and I'm just going to come into conditional formatting, okay, which is on the home ribbon, and we've got a whole bunch of predefined things that we can use. And so I'm just going to start off with highlight cell rules and greater than. Okay, so this is very simple. And I'm just going to say if it's greater than 800, okay, and then so if it's greater than 100, and you can see on the screen at the moment all the ones that are greater than 800, and what do I want it to do? How do I want it to look? What colour? So look, this says yellow fill with dark yellow text, green fill with green text, and we'll come on to how you can customise this yourself. Red text. So let's just have light red fill with dark red text. Press OK. And there you go. Very quickly, because although I was talking, you can actually do this very, very quickly. Very quickly, on the screen there, we're just highlighting anything that's above 800. Okay? Anything that's greater than 800. And so these are just visual, this isn't going to affect any of the calculations. These are just visual cues for you for whatever reason. Okay? Let me clear out that conditional formatting. So I'm just going to say clear the rules from my selected cells. Let's try a different sort. Let's do less than. Let's do less than 150. Let's see any particularly good months, and let's fill it with a different colour just to get some idea. So those are, there you go, very quickly, anything that's less than 150 is now formatted. Let's have a look at something else. And let's see, let's have maybe between. Okay, so let's say between, we'll go for the 500. So between 500 and 599. And let me just show you what's going on here. Because I didn't delete or clear my formatting from my previous conditional formatting, I now have sort of I have two types of conditional formatting going on. I've got the red text with sort of light red background, or pink as it's otherwise known, showing me all the things between 5 and 600, and I've still got my sort of yellowy orange colour for anything that's 100 or below. Okay, so bear that in mind, that you do have to clear out old formats before you enter any new ones. So I'll just show you the process. We can clear any rules. We can clear them from the entire sheet, or we can clear selected ones. I've actually selected them, so I'll choose selected this time. But clicking the entire sheet will probably be, as long as you didn't care, they would all go basically on the sheet. Okay, so those are quite good. Where it's got this is actually going to do some maths on your behalf now. So before we just specified like above X or below Y or something like that. Well, let me get it to show me the top 10. So these are now the highest top, the highest 10 bills that we have. Okay, so that's quite nice, quite simple. Let me, I'll just clear those. Again, we've got the bottom ones as well. We've got the top 10%. Now, this is obviously different from the top 10 items, because you could have, let's see, I wonder if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there are 8 items that appear in the top, are in the top 10% of all my numbers. I'm just going to show you a little trick as well. See, you'll notice that all of the cells say rand between 0 and 1000 using that little formula I showed you before. This is really cool. What you can do is you select everything. I'm going to right click and move it. And what you get is the option to move something, copy something, and these are the useful ones. Copy here as values only. So if I copy them as values only, they will just become the numbers and no longer the formula. Okay, hope that makes sense. And I'll just, so I've still got one row, so what I'll do is I'm just going to copy it back and copy here as values only. Excellent. Do you know what? I actually, the way I normally do it, I've just remembered, you do it in one motion actually. You normally click, move it off, move it back again, and copy here as values. And then that would move it across and move it back. Okay. Let's clear the whole sheet of conditional formatting. Let's start looking at some of the more maybe gimmicky ones, but quite visually appealing. We can have a little graphical representation that Excel is taking care of for us here and drawing onto the screen the range of our images. So I'll just click here, and we can have it in different colours. So let's have it in green, and you can see what it's doing. So you take one that's like 969, so that's one of the highest numbers, and the green bar is all the way across. You find another much smaller number like 158, and you see the green bar is only taking up a small percentage. Let's just have a look at some of the other sorts of things we can do. We can do coloured scales. Okay, so I'm just trying to find a nice one. Here we go. So here, as the numbers are small, then they're going yellower, and as the numbers get bigger, then they're going more green. But what's actually happening as well, because I've left on the previous conditional formatting, it's actually mixing two together, and so I'm getting quite a horrible result. So I must clear my rules. Let's just do that one again and view it as it should be. I thought it was looking a little bit freaky. There we go. That's so you can see that the darker colours here, the darker greens represent the lowest colours, and the whites, or going towards white, represents the highest colours. Okay, I think we get an idea. I'll just show you one or two more. We'll just clear those ones. So these ones are also, these are quite pretty ones. These are little icons that we can have. I'll just sort of explain these quite quickly. Here, we're using 3 different coloured arrows to show the highest, the mid. So it's splitting the numbers into 3 sections essentially. The green up arrows are our highest third of numbers. The amber sideways arrows are the middle ones, and the red lower arrows are the smallest. We can use sets that either have 4 arrows or even 5 arrows, and it just breaks it down into, so this is, we've got 20%. So this now has, the top 20% has the green up arrow, the bottom 20% has the red down arrow, and all the rest in between are, the different colour arrows. We can do it with grey ones just pointing in different directions. You can do things like traffic lights, that's quite nice. Traffic lights with a black for the very lowest. Tick boxes, exclamation marks. Quite like that actually. I haven't really paid that one much attention before, but that could be quite good for marking things. You could have a couple of rules set up for that. Flags, these are quite nice, sort of Wi-Fi strength signal bars, representing the best to the worst. Okay, so I think you're getting the idea. So what all of this is boiling down to is it's giving us different formats, and we looked at formatting in the very first week, depending on different criteria. Well, let's go ahead and actually make our own ones, because these are all sort of percentages, or the top 10% or something like that. Let's actually make our own, because that's probably more useful. So let's make a new rule. And when you go into the new rule, we have this sort of little I want to say wizard, but it's not even really a wizard. So there are only like 6 different types of styles that we can, but you can open these, you can choose any of these, and then we can alter the specifics at the bottom. So let's format cells based on their value. Okay, and so what I want to do is I want to find out anything that is greater than a certain number. Okay? Now, I we've got all of the different icon sets that we saw from here from before. So if you were marking something, for example, then you don't have to rely on it being into percentages. You can say if the marks are 50 and above, give it this. If it's 40 and below, give it that. Now the one I'm actually looking for is actually one of these: format only cells that contain. Okay, so let's just get a basic idea. So we're going to say that the cell value, instead of between, let's say greater than. Okay, because this is a typical thing, and we'll do one that we did similar at the first. So anything over 900 is bad news. But what we can now have the ability to do, so as well as specifying lots of different options, okay, cell values, and we can do text and dates and things like that. But we'll just stick with cell values. We've got also the option to format it, and we can choose now exactly how we want the formatting to look. So I think we should have sort of warning bells going off. Let's just make it look awful like that. So we'll say OK. Gives you a little preview here of how the cells that are affected are going to look. So I'll press OK. And there you go. A very simple, but I think quite effective way of demonstrating what it is you're trying to show somebody. So there's a formula based on turn it red, anything that's above 900. Okay, so let's just write one of the formula. Formatting, I'm going to clear that one away. Let's do a new one. Let's say format only values that are above or below average. So we want to format, let's say, below average. So obviously the average is it's going to add them all up for us, divide by how many there are, find out the average, and then show us all the ones that are below average, so sort of 50% and below. And what do we want to see for the 50%? Well, let's go a stage further than we went last time. So these are good news. These bills are, because these are bills that are the cheapest. So let's have the fill to be blue. Let's put a dotted line around them. Let's, we can choose a different font if we want to. We can even have some strike through in text. We can even have them marked as currency. Let's go for that. So I've chosen all my different options. And then I'm going to say OK. It will give me a little preview in here. So maybe for this particular style, we're not worrying about the bills that are in the smallest bills. But look at all the things it's done there. It's all the different types of things that we can do with formatting. So we've changed the cell color. We've added the dollar symbol to the formatting. We've chosen it to be strike through. I mean, I don't know how useful this is, but what I'm trying to convey is the different types of things that can be covered by conditional formatting. Okay, well there we've come to the end of today's session. Thank you very much. Please contact your assessor if you've got any specific questions, and I look forward to doing the next session with you next week.